Hello, and welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. I am the producer, Jason Lewis. I would like to thank you for tuning in to the From the Shadows podcast. And without further ado, here is your host, Shane Grove.
Welcome, everyone, to the From the Shadows podcast. This is your host, Shane Grove. And with me introducing this episode is the super producer, Jason.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And believe me, this is a real treat. We are also joined by the never seen and seldom heard, the Ozark Howler. You gonna say hi? Or
yeah.
what
What's up? Well, I was gonna howl. I was working on my howl, and then I chickened out at the last minute. Okay.
There you go.
Well, this episode, we got to talk to a guy, an author. His name is Sean Seebach. Now, his last name is spelled Seebach, but it's pronounced Seebach. He is an author of a great book called Autumn Dark, and another really spooky, cool book called The Pigman, which we touch on a little bit here in the episode. But he's from a small town in Ohio. Don't ask me to tell you what the name of that town is, because I didn't even recognize it. But he had a really creepy, horrifying experience back in the 90s during that Satanic panic stage, and that story was featured on a show that I believe was on the Travel Channel called Evil Encounters. This is a pretty cool episode talking about something that probably the majority of our listeners lived through if you lived in a small town somewhere in rural America. The whole everybody getting into the devil worshiping and the stuff. And Howler, you're an experienced lawman out in the middle of nowhere. What do you remember about the Satanic panic back in those days?
Well, it was. I grew up out here in the Ozarks. They don't call it the Bible Belt for nothing, And we had two kinds of people back then where I grew up, Catholics and Protestants. There wasn't a whole lot of room for the Satanic cult, but there was an old rendering plant, like a horse rendering plant, animal rendering plant, glue factory, they'd call it, Yeah. And I don't ever remember it being open. But by the time I was a cop, it was all the windows had been smashed down. It's full of graffiti, and that was the rumor where it had all those those symbols, and whoever was doing the graffiti would paint those as symbols so you could see it from the street side or from the road side, But sometimes you'd get a call if somebody was down there. They would all call somebody. The neighbors would call dispatch, and they'd send you down there, to run them off or whatever, and that's about what you did. Usually when you showed up in a cop car, they ran away. You didn't have to deal with them. And I didn't chase them because, they had a screw loose. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, if you think about them, especially if you're older, I know Christianity is kind of fading out here, but it's one thing to say I'm going to rebel and smoke cigarettes, or I'm going to get an earring, or I'm going to do something else. But to say I'm going to put some devil stuff on a mural so everybody can see it, now you just offended, 2/3 of the population. Okay, whether that be Christian, Hindu, Sikh, you just infuriated 2/3 of the population, and somewhere down their lineage, if you did an ancestry or whatever, there's a crusader. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, up until a couple hundred years ago, that behavior would have been extinguished on the spot. But unfortunately, the world has allowed it to take heart and kind of take root. But a lot of those people, I think, are just there to they're kids acting out. But if you run into a true devil worshiper, let's say, I mean, you got to be on your game, because that unpredictable, man. That person is completely unpredictable.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads back into this story that Sean tells us, because is a really and it's not so much just what they encountered back there at the old abandoned Girl Scout camp. It's kind of what happened a little bit afterwards when he got back to town, and just kind of looking around and seeing, so which guy was it that was out there in the robe carrying the torch doing the chanting? So that everything you just said, Howler, that kind of plays right into it. It's I think not that they're not earnest in what they believe in. I mean, if you're earnest enough to go out and light a fire and beat on drums and try to conjure up the devil, you must be pretty committed.
Now, but I'm going to go to their defense. I'm going to defend the occult real quick here.
Okay. All right.
Because I don't know how long ago it was that he bumped into these people. But just like we had our previous conversation about, back before the internet and cell phones made dating easy, sometimes you had to partake in some weird stuff because that's what the girls were doing. So some of those dudes might have just been there
just to pick up chicks.
Yeah, maybe they're a significant other, or maybe the chick that they're trying to impress was there. And I have to double defend those kind of guys, okay? Because now this is going to sound bad. I don't even know if I should say it. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not even going to halt, because what I wanted to say was, if it's a chick at an occult meeting, she's probably going to have significant skill sets that are not displayed with other groups of females of that age. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we'll just leave that. We'll just leave that one there to the imagination of our listeners. And then as you listen to this episode, I am now that the Howlers brought that point up, I'm going to wonder, because I know Sean will be listening to this and his friends. Did those guys really go out there to impress some chicks? Or were there girls out there they were interested in and they got rebuffed, just like in the old days?
Take heed.
How about that?
Pearls of wisdom from the Ozark Howler.
Yep. So with that in mind, enjoy this episode. Welcome everybody to the From the Shadows podcast. We are here this morning with, and he regained his title back after a little glitch, super producer Jason.
How's it going, everybody?
The best looking member of the group, Jerry.
Howdy, everyone.
We have Alyssa here. She was expecting to say hi after I said the best looking member.
I was.
Yes, she was.
But good morning.
And then under the weather, we have the judge. How you doing this morning, Judge?
I'm hanging in there. I'm soldiering on.
Hanging in there. We have a little fly on the wall. We have Alyssa's mom over here. She brought donuts, so we'll give her a shout out. How you doing?
I'm good.
You're good? All right. Thanks for the donuts, by the way.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So joining us this morning for the podcast is TV star. Can we call you a TV star, Sean?
You can, but I don't know how accurate that is.
Okay. Well, we don't pride ourselves on being very accurate anyway. So, TV star, author, and Ohio boy, Sean Seebach. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Thank you. I'm known for butchering names. So
You've already called Alicia Alyssa twice.
have I really?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't even have known if you hadn't told me. Thanks for ruining my morning.
You're welcome.
So Alicia. So Sean, welcome this morning. We're glad to have you on. You have an interesting story that then got turned into an episode on the TV show Evil Encounters. So you want to just jump right in and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and then how this story came to be.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a small town with one traffic light called Lithopolis here in Ohio. And there wasn't really much to do. We have a gorgeous library there named the Wagnalls Memorial Library, and a playground where the elementary school is. And those are really the only two places where that would really serve as any type of entertainment, aside from Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo, which I guess I'm dating myself when I say that.
That's way better than me telling you about my Atari 2600 or my Coleco handheld football game.
All I had was Pong.
Oh.
Now, where for all of our Ohio listeners, because we have a ton, where exactly is your hometown? Because I'd never heard of it, and I still don't, and I wouldn't even try the name because I just ended up saying Alicia.
It's in between Canal Winchester and Lancaster. That's kind of the best way that I can describe it. I'm not good with north, south, east, or west, so I think it might be north, east. It's probably more southeast between Canal and Lancaster.
Okay, so either way, it's out there in the middle of nowhere.
I'm familiar with the Lancaster
and especially
area.
back then.
Canal
Especially
Fulton and
before the
Lancaster
big
area.
boom in the 90s when they started building. So
Okay. So basically, you're out here in the small town, other than your Sega Genesis and Madden '92. You're at the playground. There's one stoplight. You got the library. So
basically everybody congregated at the playground and played basketball. So, you rode your bike, you played basketball, or you read books, or you played video games. So, I don't know, maybe I was 12 or 13, me and a group of my friends, and we go there and watch all the older kids play ball, slam dunk, all that stuff. And they used to tell us stories about these devil worshippers being back in the woods behind the elementary school. And they described them as, they're bloodthirsty, man, and they're on four-wheelers. We were back there on our bikes, and we found a trail back there, and we heard them fire up their four-wheelers, and they came chasing after us. And then we went back there again, and we saw, a statue of the Virgin Mary with a deer head on it, and then we found the body a little ways away from that with forks and knives stuck in it, stuff like that. But they were adamant about it being real. And I don't know, I guess that just kind of percolated in my brain for a long time. And we would go to the video store on the weekends and rent scary movies and stuff. And I don't know, I guess that the idea of there being something creepy and evil within a stone throw of my house, I just decided, I don't know, I guess it just stayed there and built up, and I just started bugging my friends about going out there one night to check it out.
So you're the instigator then?
I think so, yeah.
All right, well, as long as we've established that.
But in my defense, I think in every horror movie, typically the instigator's usually the last one to survive or close to it.
Oh, I see. So you're just trying to get a leg up on everybody else.
It follows the formula.
It follows the formula. Judge, would that fly in the courtroom, saying the I was the instigator defense, where I just wanted to be the last one standing?
There's something in Ohio law called complicity. So even though you may not actually rob the bank, if you're along for the ride, you're just as guilty. You are complicit.
Or even in the planning.
So now we've established that Sean is complicit in this every aspect of this story that is going to happen.
So how far from your house was this location?
Oh my gosh. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 5 houses down.
That's it.
From the playground. The forest was really deep. So the actual elementary school, I walked to school, and I could walk there in a minute. To make it, I don't know. Like I said before, I'm not very good with distance, but if I was on my front porch and there were people playing basketball at the playground, I could hear the ball bouncing.
Okay. So in other words, you're hearing these stories about something going on in the woods where it's a stone's throw away, literally, from your house.
Yeah.
Okay.
The actual entrance that we used to get into the woods was not a stone throw away. but
Okay.
the actual like edge of the woods on that part of the forest is where is where I lived closest to. That doesn't make any sense, but yeah.
I can picture kind of what you're saying. Like the woods was massive, and the actual entrance was maybe miles and miles away on the other side of the section. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
about a mile.
Yeah.
I drove it a couple weeks ago, and I guess when I was younger, it seemed much further away. But it's only about a mile.
Oh, geez. Okay. All right. So when did you get the bright idea then that you and your buddies should be brave and venture on back?
It was I think it was September 13th, 1996. Actually, it was a Friday the 13th. I'm pretty sure it was a full moon, and I think it was all those things
That you saw in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Maybe we should make a checklist and put it up on the website for all the things not to do. Not to do. Okay. All right. Go
Don't
ahead.
worry, we did almost all of them, which you're about to find out.
Okay.
It gets better.
Right.
So we so with all those things aligned, we're my friends and I are 15, 16, coming of age. Played NBA Jam for the 500th time, and I guess we got a crew together. It was me, Justin, Phil, Jerry, and Joey. There was 5 of us, and we pulled the old, "Hey, we're gonna stay the night at so and so's house," and we had one friend who had his license. He drove a hatchback, and
Wait a second,
remember
Judge, are you telling one of our New Year's Eve stories? Where that's how all of our New Year's Eve stories started.
we all climbed into a hatch.
Yeah, that's about right.
I haven't got to those episodes yet, but I will. I aim to.
Okay.
Yeah, so we all climbed in and we drove around and, psyched ourselves up, and we went to the McDonald's in Canal Winchester that they had just built. They were just there on Gender Road, and we ate and got our courage up and went and bought a disposable camera. This is at a time when pagers were at their peak. The smartphone was yet to be invented or popularized. I'm not quite sure if they were even invented.
They
yet.
were being much older than you. They were not invented yet.
There were a few cell phones that we had spotted, but they were like the Zach Morris Saved by the Bell cell phones, the big gray ones.
Yeah, that you carried around in a bag.
Yep, pretty much. So we got the disposable camera with the flash, and we drove around 674 and psyched ourselves up and drove back there. But I got a back pedal. So before we all got into the hatchback, me and my buddy went back there on our bikes. So this is off of Smith Road. So you go down Smith Road. It's not really a country road anymore because of all the building they've done. But you make a left off of a not so hidden drive, but it's just like a gravel path. And there's about 1, 2, 3. At the time, there were like 4 or 5 homes in between Smith Road and the entrance to the woods. Some of them were a little closer to the gravel path than the others. I think there was 4 of them. And so we traveled down this gravel path, and we hit the entrance to the woods, and there are 2 big wooden posts on either side and a big metal fence with, plain as day, a sign that says no trespassing.
So you can read, right? You can read.
Yes.
All right, I just checked. All right.
And we unlatched the gate because that's the smart thing to do, and we opened the gate and we rode our bikes back there. And we rode it all the way to the back. Now, when you first enter, so there's like some trees, and then there's big open fields on both sides of this gravel path. And then that's when the forest like kind of closes in, and this path is lined with trees, and their branches intertwine at the top and create this really cool, like, nature tunnel.
So when does the spooky music start playing? At what point when you're driving back there does the ominous organ start playing in the distance?
I think when we get to the field, because like it's dead quiet, except for maybe some cicadas, maybe, but it's really quiet. And to me, a setting like that, when you're pretty sure you're the only two people in an area such as a forest, and it's daylight, that's more frightening to me almost than the nighttime, because of a movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think that makes that movie so effective is that happens in the daytime.
Well, yeah, I was just going to tell you,
things aren't supposed to happen in the daytime.
Right.
I'm almost certain you were not the only ones back there at that point, probably.
Probably not. There was probably some prepping going on that we weren't aware of. So we rode our bikes all the way to the back, and we had heard that there was a house back there, but the house was abandoned. And we rode down the gravel trail, and every so often you would see like another little trail that would open up to another clearing in the forest. And in that area were cabins. They had cabins spread out, a big mess hall. And the first road that you can turn right at, well, it's not really a road, it's a clearing. That's where the mess hall is, and I know that there were 2 cabins back there, and I think there were a few more scattered about. So anyway, we take this path all the way down to the end, and sure enough, we see the house. And the house, the windows are busted out. There's a hole in the roof. The planks on the front porch are busted in. I mean, it's been abandoned. Nobody lives there. There's some spray paint, I think, on the outside. There's probably some vulgarities. I really can't remember. But we confirmed that nobody lives in the house, and we rode our bikes back. And then, so there was like this huge pothole, though, at the entrance. So my 15-year-old mind decided that what we would do is put a stick over that, and it was filled with muddy water. And if anybody drove back there after me and my friend had just, quote, scouted the place out, they would have to drive over that stick. So if the stick was busted, we would know that there were people back there once we got back there at night.
I got to stop you right here.
Yeah.
That is a super smart thing for a 15, 16-year-old kid to do.
Oh, why, thank you.
Okay.
Why, thank you. Thank you very much.
But it just totally is dwarfed by all the other dumb things you guys did. It doesn't make sense. It's a paradox.
You know what this sounds like? Have you seen the Blair Witch movie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like a sign up like the Blair Witch thing going on. Yeah. Abandoned house in the middle of the woods.
So the cabin in the mess hall, was there actually something back there at one time that was occupied? That was
old Boy Scout camp or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was an old Girl Scout camp. I should probably
okay. See that. Now there. Okay.
Now it's making sense.
A Girl Scout camp, a couple of young guys on bikes. I totally get it. All right. But maybe if there's Girl Scouts there.
Yeah, but Girl Scouts are usually like 10-year-old girls.
But they're 15-year-old. Dude, I remember when you were 15.
Oh,
okay?
No, you do not.
Yes, I do. Okay, go ahead before this turns into a whole other podcast.
No, you guys are good. So thank you for that, though. That gives a lot of clarity to the story. So we, all right, so the day goes on, blah, blah, blah. We shoot hoops, and we get in the hatchback, go to McDonald's. All right, so night has fallen. I don't know what time it was. Maybe around 9 o'clock. And we pull back there, kill the headlights, and God, it almost sounded like the beginning of a Beck song. Killed the headlights, put it in neutral. No, and we got out, opened up the gate, and sure enough, the stick was broke, and the dry, dirty road was muddy from the pothole. So we knew somebody had driven back there since we'd been back there. Now, why anybody would go back there, I'm not too hip on hunting. I'm not quite sure when hunting season is. Maybe it is in September, but it never occurred to us that it could have been hunters. So that's when the nerves start to.
Well, of course, you guys were back. Nuts. You guys went back there because you were up to no good. Why would you just assume that anybody else that was back there was up to no good?
Right. We're all in this together. So, so we pull over to the side, and we pop the trunk. And I think I don't know. We're like passing out weapons. I think I had a tire iron in case my buddy got a flat. Somebody picked up a big rock. Somebody picked up a stick. We were all athletic, so I think somebody had a baseball bat. And I had the camera. So our whole goal was just.
So you were the fastest guy because you had the camera. Because you had the camera. And
I was the slowest guy.
Oh, Jesus.
I was the slowest guy.
Well, being the ringleader, I hate to tell you that this is not turning out good if you don't have the weapon and you're the slowest guy.
Right.
The fastest guy should have the camera.
I'll just risk my life, snap the pictures, and throw it as far as I can. Hope you guys catch it. So our plan was to just kind of sneak through the brush and just snap pictures. And so we're coming up on the trail, we're on the trail. We're coming up to where the trees start to line the path. And so we're all like crouched low, right? And we're inching our way towards it, and we start to smell smoke. And then we start to see smoke piling out of that first clearing that I talked about earlier, where the mess hall is. And as we get closer, we start to hear tribal drums. And then we start to hear a woman moaning, screaming, moaning, pleasure, pain, couldn't tell. Too young, I guess, to tell. And that's when we saw around that. So we're all like looking at each other, kind of like, holy crap, what's going on? So we creep up. The group to the left crosses over the dirt trail, and we start to head toward the brush, and we see a flame, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 feet high off the ground, go across the path. We're like, holy crap. So we all get down low and we focus on it, and it's someone holding a torch.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. And so we get a little bit closer, and they spot us, and they run toward the clearing from the opposite side of the trail, and they're wearing a cloak.
Did you start taking pictures?
No. Oh. I was too scared.
Oh, for God's sake.
When you say they're wearing cloaks, I mean...
Yeah, like a dark hood with like a robe. Eyes Wide Shut. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yes. So
like
that traditional Palpatine kind of, using another euphemism, that Palpatine kind of cloak. Yeah.
Please tell me you got the heck out of there.
That's it. We did, but we went back.
Oh God!
So you ran, and then you doubled back. Is that what you did?
Yeah. So I think we all started running. Man, it was nuts. The adrenaline carried us to the car pretty fast. We all piled in the car, and I was the smallest one out of the 5, so I just clambered back into the hatchback.
The smallest and the slowest. Oh my God, man! This is just a recipe for disaster. Okay, so
you just called me a genius like 5 minutes ago.
I know, it's really starting to change. My opinion's really starting to change. So the person in the cloak with the torch obviously saw you guys and saw you guys take off running. Yes.
Yeah, because we saw the flame start to flicker.
Okay.
Like if you can imagine someone holding a torch and then rushing, like
okay.
you know the tip of the flame bent and rushed toward the clearing.
Okay. All right. So you guys jump in the car, you cram in the back of the hatchback. These guys are wondering why they listened to you and why they brought you. Because you're the last guy there, and then they got to stuff you in the hatchback.
Oh man, we were pumped though. It was like, oh my god, it's them, it's true, it's all true. So we drove around to calm ourselves, and then we decided, well, we still didn't have any proof.
Oh boy.
They're not going to believe it.
And you realize that's your fault because you have the camera.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I'm not trying to beat you up, but come on.
Okay.
Okay.
So, so the whole point of going back there was to have proof, and they only had our word. Or we only had our word. So we go back. So we go down the gravel drive, and the gate's still open, and we roll past it, and headlights pop up behind us.
Oh boy! So you're already so did these headlights, had they been following you on the road, or they popped up after you've already got on the gravel drive?
They popped up after we got on the gravel drive.
So they were just waiting laying in the weeds, so to speak, for the suckers to come back.
Absolutely.
Oh boy! All right.
Couple of punk teenagers, they're bound to come back. So we roll back there, and we're all freaking out, telling the driver to turn around because that's the only way in and the only way out. So he goes in the field and gets turned around, and now we're like face to face with these headlights, like we're about to play chicken or something. And out of the passenger side door comes this real squirrely looking guy, faded t-shirt cut off, real skinny, dark tan, just runs up to the car and starts smacking the windows. You kids are all dead. You're all dead. You got no business being back here. You're all dead. You hear me? Boom, boom. And he he starts smacking on the hatchback, and I'm like looking up like, oh my God. And and so the driver gets out, and he's all calm and casual and cool. Tells his buddy to calm down. I don't remember what he said or his name. I don't even think we could have heard him because we had the windows rolled up, and the lock smashed down, and which I guess wouldn't really affect our hearing if the locks were smashed down. But I know it just dawned on me that I remember the passenger just immediately went smack on the door and locked the door. And so the driver of the truck calms down his cohort there, and they walk over to the driver's side door, and he knocks on the glass like he's a police officer or something. And the driver cranks the window down about an inch, and the guy, I think he had a flashlight, and he shines it in, blinds us all, and asks for the driver's license. And we're all like, don't give it to him, don't give it to him, don't give it to him. And we're all scared to death. So he pulls it out, and the driver's license trembling because he can't keep his hand straight, and he slides it, rightfully so, and he slides it through the crack, and the guy takes a glance at it and shines the light back in on our faces and slides it back through the thing. He gives it back to the driver there, and he goes, so why are you guys back here? And we said, oh, we were looking for a party, and we got lost, and we were looking for a place to turn around because, there's still 4 or 5 houses back there. And he's like, oh, is that right? And he goes, well, this is no trespassing back here. This here's private property. Me and my buddy here live in the house at the end of this drive here.
The one that's abandoned, clearly abandoned.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm like, you and all the raccoons and possums, huh? Great. And, and we're all, so, they know that we're lying, and we know that they're lying. So it's kind of an odd situation. And we're like, oh, really? Wow, okay, well, sorry about that. And he's like, yeah, we were just out at the grocery store, and we're on our way back home, and saw you guys pull in. So sorry about my friend here. He just gets a little excited.
Yeah, he's got groceries. He got to get back to the house. He doesn't hear it as well.
That's hilarious. Yeah, and so our the guy in the passenger seat, he says, he goes, "Oh yeah, you guys live back in that house, huh?" He goes, "I thought this used to be an old Girl Scout camp." And the guy, I swear, man, his eyes narrow and he leans in. He goes, "There ain't no more Girl Scouts running through here no more." And we're just like, "Oh man!" And so he said that he told us that, he goes, "I remember each one of your faces, and if I ever see you back here again, you're going to meet my shotgun. Is that clear?" And we're like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir." And they got in the truck and they pulled over to the side and they let us go.
Now,
but the thing is like if he wasn't the one in the cloak holding the torch, how would he know to fall back and hide out in the weeds, so to speak, and wait for somebody to return? Know what I mean?
Yeah. Or at least he was there. He was the guy
playing.
He
was a part of it.
Maybe he was the guy playing the drums. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. Well, he was a little more calm and cool, collected. Maybe he was a little,
Yeah, he had a little Mary Jane. And
let me ask this: when you first went up there and you heard the drums, you saw the torch, you saw the people in the cloaks, did you see any cars parked back there?
We did not.
Which I find strange that there wouldn't be cars. Like, I mean, if you were having a satanic ritual, let's say, you were going to have 20 people back there, you all ain't climbing in one pickup truck. So where did they stash their cars? Or was there another entrance to the woods that you just don't know about?
That possibly could be right, but I'm telling you, I explored those woods years before that too, and I think that's the only entrance back to that particular area.
Well, how could you see that abandoned house from like where you guys were at? I mean, that's on farther back. So conceivably, they could have drove all their cars back to the abandoned house and been, nobody would have seen them, I would think.
Hoofed it, correct.
Yeah.
Or they could have pulled into the clearing.
Or they were all still at the grocery store.
Correct.
I mean, I love
somebody was paying with a personal check and they got held up.
I would love, I'd almost love to interview those guys and say, "Listen, dude, where did you get? We just came back from the grocery store. Like all the stuff you could have had. Where
it came from the bar.
Yeah. We just got off work. We just
So how many?
Right,
people...
the grocery store. So two guys in their 40s who live together on a Friday night, who clearly have had a rough life just based on their appearance. They had dark tans, like almost like they're tan year round just from working out in the sun all day. They had deep wrinkles in their faces.
Was the grocery store maybe like a members only club in Lancaster that you just didn't know about?
It could have been.
So how many people lived in your town?
At that time, I believe the consensus was 191 people.
Oh, boy.
And so did you recognize any of the people that you saw at this ritual?
Those two guys, no. But a few weeks later, so one of the guys who was with us, his parents owned the bar/pizza shop in town. And he worked there. And a few weeks later, he approached me and said, "Hey man, that driver, I saw him at the bar today. He works for the company next door. So next door to that bar, or maybe it's a few shops down. It's not there anymore. The actual window place, as window/construction, I guess. They specialized in windows and framing, I think." Which is an odd pair, but I could be wrong. But yeah, the driver worked for that guy because he was wearing the company shirt.
He was wearing the company shirt the night that you guys saw him, or the day he came into the bar and your buddy saw him.
The day he came into the bar, he came in with a crew of like a work crew, and they all had the logo shirt on, and they were drinking at the bar.
So he
was he a guy that lived in the town or just came to the town for work?
Man, I don't think he lived in the town. He probably lived on the outskirts of town because the town was so small, I saw everybody because I like to be outdoors. So I was either on my bike or, I mean, if it was nice out, I was outside. And back then it was the old, Mom and Dad, I'm going out. It's like 10 a.m. All right, be back before, it's dark. Okay. And you just wander around and explore and,
So what do you think was going on there that night?
I don't know. So one of the kids said his grandpa, one of the kids' a local kid's grandfather lived back there in one of those houses close to the woods. And he said, oh man, my grandpa hears those drums all the time. It's just kids partying. And I'm like, no, it's not kids partying. And as I got older and went to college, I've been to plenty of bonfires. And, the music played wasn't tribal drums. It was, Bob Seger and Stone Temple Pilots and no.
Well, you didn't get invited to the right
torches.
parties. You didn't get invited to the right parties then. I mean, come on.
Right.
So did you see any indicia of some type of ritual going on other than, obviously wearing the robe and carrying a torch as prima facie evidence that you're doing something that's a little bit out there?
No, we didn't. That's all we saw and heard.
So obviously then the guy that was the driver that shows up at the bar, he had a terrible memory if he did not remember the guy that was in the car working at the bar, probably serving him.
Well,
right?
He wasn't working at the bar. He was too young, you see. He worked in the pizza side of the business.
Oh, okay.
And they were both attached.
All right, okay.
So I guess he wandered to the bathroom or, dropped off a pizza at the bar, and he noticed him before the guy noticed him.
Now, when we talked before, did you mention to me that the guy who owned the framing and the window place also owned that piece of property back there?
Oh, he did back then, yeah. I don't know if he still does. But oh yeah.
Okay, so let's start putting two together. Add 12, carry 5.
Oh god, that would be like 0.75.
So the property
I suck at math.
that this ritual took place on was owned by the guy who owned the business
that
the creepy guy worked at.
Correct.
So if you start extrapolating this out, you have one of two scenarios. One, the guy who owned the business is in on this and is part of the ritual. Or
right.
Two, the creepy guy knew the guy owned the land and figured he could go back there and do that. But that doesn't make sense because the teenagers that were older than you, who had talked to you, had told you stories, said that this had been going on for years. Mm-hmm. So that leads me to believe that the owner of the business was probably the ringleader using his property. So that begs the question, you live in a town of 191 people, how many of those people were in on these rituals?
Right.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I gotta think that a guy that in a town that size that owns a framing and window business is probably a very influential, respected person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that family was financially successful. They lived about 10 miles outside of town.
Whoa, boy.
Maybe they were successful because they were in league with Beelzebub himself.
There you go. Well, so now we all went to school. We know how word travels about stuff that happens on the weekend. How quick was it before everybody in your little school knew what you guys had done?
Oh, Monday we were rock stars.
All right. So
we had people coming up. Man, me and my uncle are going to go out there. We're going to get his hunting gear, and we're going to grab him. We're going to get him. And I'm like, no, dude, no, we're not taking guns back there. We're done. We're done with it. We are never going back there again. Now, I've been as close as to the gates since that's happened. I mean, I'm 39 now. I was 15 when it happened. So you're talking 24 years ago. And I still won't go beyond those gates. Not only because of that, but also because it says no trespassing, and I can be put in jail for that.
Well,
I
now,
don't want to be back there snooping.
Yeah.
but hey, you already admitted you could read back then when you were 15. You understood
And with
that.
no criminal record, you can get straight probation.
So I'm curious. So your parents, were they from this area too? Like, I mean, where you grew up?
No, we had moved there about 6 years prior
Okay.
to these events.
So,
Yeah.
so obviously, your parents have heard this story that you.
Oh yeah, and they didn't believe us.
They didn't believe you at the time. Do they still not believe you?
Man, I don't know.
I mean,
I think well, my dad just kind of smiles and he's like, "Yeah, I remember that." Like,
Well,
do you believe me? I don't know.
well, I mean, if the kids in the community are aware this is going on, and the kid's older than you, and if we're going to go with the judge's theory here that this has probably been going on for a long time, then the older generation, the generation above, older than you, has to know some of these stories and probably has experienced some of this stuff too. So I wonder. I mean, I just find it odd that just you guys went back there and that's it.
The question
You
is,
know?
how many people in your town was in on this?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to school yucking it up when it could be your math or science teacher.
Yeah.
Is one of the people
Was
on
it-
the roads.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they could want to keep it secret.
How did you do in school after that? Did you get all? Were you a CD student and suddenly became all A's, or vice versa? You know, 'cause they might-
I was a B student.
yeah, I say the
C
same
in
thing.
math.
I say the same thing too. I was really a D student, so it's okay. I get smarter in my own
I was
mind.
above average in some courses.
So I think
Gym and
probably
art. I really excelled in gym and art.
Gym and art.
Yes.
Gym and art, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
but I was the only one who actually lived in town. So my other friend lived closer to those woods, but he hadn't heard anything since then, or since that night, I should say. And his parents have since moved away because they just started building left and right out there. Lots of new builds, developments, and whatnot.
So does that property still stand as it did, or is it?
Man, when did I do that show? When was that? Like 3 years ago? As of now, it's still like that because I took the producer and the photographer of that TV show back there just to get a few shots if they wanted to use it for the show. And I took them back to where the gate is. I don't know if they used it or not. I haven't seen the episode that was actually aired because I don't have cable. But
Well, you're a TV star. You should be able to afford cable.
I know it's terrible, right?
Yeah. I mean,
priorities.
did you guys? Does the same guy still own the property, or don't you? I mean, have you not investigated it that far?
I have not investigated it that far.
I mean, that right there is if that guy still owns that property, would be all you would. I mean, that would tell me all I needed to know that something is probably still going on back there, and that guy.
Something is afoot in that
Yeah,
town.
I mean, I've seen enough Datelines in 2020 special editions to know that where, like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire, or at least a guy in a robe carrying a torch.
That sounds like we need to do some investigating.
or a bemoaning
Oh
woman.
boy.
Yeah.
Jerry, we know you can't read, but the judge has already said you can't use that as an excuse for seeing the no trespassing
Especially if he's
sign.
with us. We can't
Yeah,
say we didn't see
yeah.
it.
You can't go past the no trespassing sign.
Maybe if we go the other way and do that
Jerry's
one.
written me 3 notes asking about the moaning woman again. We're not going to talk about that.
The moaning woman.
It's hillbilly eyes wide shut.
Yeah.
Eyes wide shut.
Listen, you're not making it any less appealing for Jerry to want to go investigate. I gotta be honest with you.
But I mean, so now that I've said it, I mean, what else could it have possibly have been besides what besides an actual besides an actual ritual or some sort of kinky sex party? I mean, what are the other options?
Well, and we discussed this a little bit before we even got on with you. Was that time, especially in Ohio, was the Satanic Panic?
Panic is what they coined it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and there was stuff. Every weekend you'd hear somebody say, "Oh, I drove by." We have a big stone quarry north of Bucyrus here, National Lime and Stone, and it encompasses 2 country blocks at least. And so they had bought up, they bought up every house and tore it down, and they just keep expanding. So that part of the county, there's really not a lot of people that live right around the stone quarry. But people, even as a couple weeks ago, a guy that we went to school with called me up. He lives in South Dakota, and was saying, "Hey, I don't know if you could use this on the show, but I remember a couple times cutting through there, and back in the early '90s, and you'd see bonfires in the woods, and you'd see this, and stuff that was just totally out of place back there, and your mind just, it can be just somebody burning trash, or somebody roasting marshmallows." It's like, oh God, what are they doing? What are they doing?
Having parties.
Yeah,
we heard stories. I mean, we heard stories as kids of this very similar situations where, devil worshippers, things like that, went to these woods. My dad, I can't remember the exact location of the woods, but he told me the story. Went back there and there were animal bones and different things like that. Spray paint on trees and weird markings and stuff like that. So, this was right there in that time frame.
Well, you just wonder, would you first of all, would you really trespass on somebody else's land to conjure up the devil?
It's not really I don't think it's a fact of who owns that land. It's the properties of the land itself.
Is that
cause people to do that?
Okay.
But you got to understand also, back then, it literally became part of the culture. Like, even the kids' games, like the Dungeons and Dragons games, people were talking about that was evil. They were saying that kids were conjuring spirits and things like that.
I'm sorry.
I play Dungeons and Dragons now, 5th edition, and it's
very interesting. He says that he's wearing a shirt with a dragon on it.
Yeah, it is. But that right there is not a Dungeons and Dragons dragon.
That is an Eastern.
It's an Eastern dragon, yes.
Eastern dragon.
Well, the other thing that came to mind, and I wrote down on the paper and showed it to the judge, and if the judge would be kind enough to share the story as he knows it and the actual facts behind the story, it's a similar. We have a place north of town that when we were kids, it was called Pig's Alley. Okay, and it's this little. You guys laugh. It's called Pig's Alley, and we're not trying to promote Sean's other book,
Not yet.
The Pig Man, not yet, but it was this little. We would call it a farm lane, but actually,
it's a dedicated road.
It was an actual road, and it went back into a field, made a big dog leg to the left, and came out on the
state route.
To a state route. So
So
go ahead.
I grew up on a dairy farm first 9 years of my life, and on that dairy farm, the dairy farm was just down the road. You could hit a baseball to it. We lived in one of the farm properties, as a rental, with a barn and an orchard, and there were animals. Well, right behind that orchard and the house we lived in was Pig's Alley.
Pig's Alley. Yeah.
So I grew up on Pig's Alley, and there was all sorts of folklore, mythology about what had happened. A house that was there and different things, and so my uncles on my mom's side decided to take advantage of that sort of story and went and told people there's all this stuff going on Pig's Alley to induce them to go out there, and then they would dress up in scary costumes and different things like that, and jump out in front of cars, and they would do stuff like, they would spread it like, well, you're supposed to go there, turn the lights out on your car, and of course they'd jump out and start beating on the windows and stuff like that. And so there for a summer, it seemed like, when the corn was decent height, that's how they would do this. You would have all night long, you'd see people driving down Pig's Alley, until one night, a guy pulled a gun out and started shooting. And that was it for my uncles with their pig's eye hoaxes. But all was based upon.
Yeah, it was it. And you're talking, so when your uncle did this, how we were what, 9, 10, 11 years old?
10 years old.
So this story was still going around when we were in high school and beyond. And it evolved into, and there was an old house back there. Mm-hmm. And in fact, somebody we had on the podcast earlier, Tim Schiffer, mm-hmm. said his dad would have been about the same as your uncle, right. Maybe a little older, probably. That they had heard the stories, and they would drive back there. And that one night, there was an old lady sitting in the chicken coop, like sitting on an old rocking chair in front of this old chicken coop out there, because there was an old abandoned house,
right?
And and the stories we heard, that it was like a orphanage and it had burnt down and all these kids died. And the melon head, like
the mongoloids.
They call mongoloids.
That was the term of art back when we were kids, not knowing that mongoloids is an actual considered actual race for people from Far East. But
Mongols.
But so there was this story that was pervasive, that this house, whether it was used as an orphanage or whatever, but they had these kids there who were deformed. They called them mongoloids. And that, the place burned down and those kids got loose and they've been creeping around ever since. But there's multiple stories from different towns that have similar stories.
The Melonhead kids.
Right,
yes.
So you got
that was an actual
that was
an actual place where the guy was doing research.
He was doing research and the kids got out and burnt the place down and killed him.
So the thing about the Mongoloids is I remember my dad telling stories that he knew somebody who would drive by there and the kids would be outside and they were just like profoundly deformed. And they would see a car and they would run in the house because they would.
Oh boy!
I need to go there.
So when you're talking about this, so we're discussing this place that you were at, Sean. That's what reminded me of. I wonder how much of it was, people wanting to get people out there to scare them with nothing really going on, because you guys as a group had decided, hey, we're all going to go out there. Do you think any of those guys told any of your other friends that we're going out there, and the word got around, let's go out and scare them?
Man, I don't think so. And if they did, hats off to them for this. Practical joke of the freaking century. I mean, that's...
Yeah, yes.
To keep that secret that long. But the crazy thing is it's like, all right, Friday the 13th, full moon, and we just so happen to go back there and there's activity. Like, that's just so strange to me. It's wild. I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the old lady in the rocking chair.
That's what
my jaw fell open.
Yeah,
I think my heart stopped for a minute.
And here's the crazy thing is so this guy that was on the podcast, he grew up down the road from me, and where we grew up, there was 2 houses on a mile out in the country, and he was just a kid. And that place that he grew up in when I was a little kid, like 7, 8 years old, was an old lady her name was Pet Spittler, and she had a chicken coop, and was the old kind of spindly lady that you could imagine, just sitting there with a grin on her face as she rocked on her chicken, or in front of her chicken coop, counting her eggs, And so it was funny that, and he told us that after they bought the house, after she died, that stuff happened in that house. And I used to I'd go down and babysit him and his sister, and it was, it was a creepy house, but yeah, he said that that old house had a chicken coop beside it, and so in the 70s at some point, his dad with some friends drove back there, and at that point somebody must have still been living there, and the old lady was sitting out in the front of the chicken coop, one light bulb on behind her, just sitting in the rocking chair.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah. And when we say this road, I mean, this was nothing but a stone path.
Oh yeah.
And like I said,
with the one car.
Oh yeah, one car, and you couldn't have drove out of that more than 30 miles an hour. 30 miles an hour. I mean,
it was
terrible. It was terrible. I mean, it should have never. I think it was probably only a road because somebody lived there in the early 1900s.
That's how my friend's house, the one that I'm talking about coming on here in the cabin, it's nothing but a gravel to get up in his house.
That makes for a bumpy ride.
It is, especially it's an uphill too.
So you survived the trip. Nobody's saying anything. I mean, do you still get together with those guys and talk about this story? I mean, are they as forthcoming to talk about breaking the law and trespassing as you are, or?
Well, one of them is a police officer now. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I ran into him last year. Actually, I was having dinner with a friend, and he just stopped by. I haven't seen him since high school. So no, we're not in touch. I mean, we can get in touch. I'm sure. I don't have Facebook anymore, but with technology now, it's pretty easy to get in touch.
I just want
some sort of reunion or something. That'd be.
I just wonder what they're.
I think. I would venture to guess that they wouldn't have any interest in it because they probably just kind of put it behind them. But I like scary things. I like horror. I like supernatural. So it's kind of stuck with me.
Oh yeah.
So what are you doing now? You've sort of used this as an experience to springboard you into endeavors into the horror and paranormal. So tell us what you're doing.
Oh well, to make money, I'm a plumber. But the other side is, besides being a father and husband, is I'm a writer. So I use the experience to what's the word?
Inspire you?
Yes! So I wrote a book called Autumn Dark, and it's inspired by those events. Now, I was talking to Shane. We had a long talk before this interview, or before this this program, and he actually threw a lot of great ideas my way. Like, oh man, with this, you could do this, you could do that, and I'm thinking, oh man, I blew it because I already wrote the book and none of that's in there. No, but
I apologize.
But yeah, so it inspired Autumn Dark. It's kind of the old Girl Scout camp is in there, and it's kind of the genesis of where the evil comes from that haunts a small town called Woodrow, a.k.a. Lithopolis. He. So, yeah. So I write books. I'm a writer now. I got 3 published books and working hard on some others. So.
Well, we played, like I mentioned, the Pigman. We played a little bit of the audio book here. I wanted these guys to get a little taste of your style of writing. And the thing that kind of really jumped out at us, it was so Stephen King-like. Okay? And I went and I read the reviews on all your stuff. And that's one thing that keeps jumping out is people comparing you to Stephen King as far as just the cadence and the rhythm of your storytelling. Is that somebody obviously that probably inspires you, I'm guessing?
Oh yeah, man. And I got to be honest, I think he shows up in a lot of people's works, and not just in horror either. I mean, he's if not the best, one of the best to ever do it. I think in any genre. Yeah. And I just turned to the left here, and I'm staring at my bookshelf, and yeah, King dominates my book collection.
I have almost all of Stephen King's books. I love Stephen King.
But have you read them?
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yes, I never had.
I have a bunch of Stephen King books too, but I just haven't read them.
I have. The only one I don't have is one I want is The Shining. It's one of my favorite ones.
And you don't have The Shining?
I have almost every one but that one, I believe. My mom had him. She passed him down to me.
Well, now you know.
That's a great mom.
Yeah, now you know which one she.
Me and my mom are both into that kind of horror stuff.
But so the Pigman, I just got to tell you, the audiobook was pretty creepy. Okay.
Sean, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
Yeah. Well,
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's my first effort too at something longer than a short story. So I really appreciate that. I don't think it's, I guess with anybody's first work, they think that, it's not that good. But I guess whenever you do something creative, you get better as you go along. So because that was so long ago that I wrote that, I look back on it like, I could have wrote that sentence a lot better. But
so the Pigman came before Autumn Dark, or?
Yes, sir. Okay. So it was the Pigman came first. It's considered a novella. Well, it's a book. Same difference. And then I self-published Autumn Dark and a short story collection called A Looking In View shortly after that. And then I sold a story to Death's Head Press called Dig Two Graves. It's a revenge anthology. It's in volume 1 of Dig Two Graves.
And then the band Perry completely stole that title. And
that's a good song, though.
That is a good song. I wish I had been part of writing it.
So if somebody was interested in getting one of your books or reading it, how would they find it?
Amazon.
Just Amazon. Now,
Amazon. I think Kobo. I think iBooks. Barnes & Noble online.
Okay. Now, do you... So Evil Encounters, episode 104, Touched by the Devil. That's the episode that this story is on. So you have not watched that? Is that what you said? You have not.
All right. Well, they sent me a rough cut.
Okay.
They sent me a rough cut DVD, and to be honest, I hate the sound of my voice, and I don't want to watch it just because I guess I'm bashful that way or embarrassed. I can't tell which.
Okay.
But I saw clips of it because they sent me a link. And to use your word, they definitely sensationalized the story to make it more appealing and more creepy for viewers.
I get that, but I mean, I got to be honest with you. The story that you told is pretty sensational and creepy. It's
pretty creepy.
Yeah, I mean, anybody. I mean, I'm sure anybody listening, whether they snuck back to a Girl Scout camp, okay, or an abandoned house, they've all done something where it was right there on the verge of, you're not supposed to be back here, you're not supposed to be doing this, you shouldn't be out this late. I mean, Jerry does that every day. Okay?
There's a pending restraining order right now.
Oh, no, Jerry?
I feel
for life?
Stay away from Girl Scout kids.
Stay away from Girl Scout kids. Okay. Closed.
It's all about the cookies, though.
It's all about the cookies. Okay. But I think anybody listening, I'm sure it takes them right back to that time in their life, okay, 15, 16, 17 years old, doing something that you shouldn't be doing, and all of a sudden it takes a complete left turn, and
like a horror movie.
Yeah, it turns into a horror.
It has all the great elements of a horror movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know atheists who have had supernatural things happen, and they can't explain it. They're like, well, I don't know what that was. I can't explain it. That's all. That's the only way I can understand this, is that I can't explain it. And it's just wild that the more people you meet and the more comfortable they get around you, sometimes, you can, you learn that almost everyone has a story, maybe not to the extreme in which, we all have, but at some point or another, they've been somewhere, done something, saw something that they couldn't quite explain, that didn't quite make sense, and it scared them.
The scariest part of this, and I think the judge and I talked about this, is that this is, that's real. Like, people are out there dressed in a robe, have a torch. Some guys jumped out and beat on your car. I mean, it wasn't like, was that a ghost? Did we see Bigfoot or whatever? This is like real people that then in turn live in the community. And, that is the scariest part, is not knowing who.
Well, it's, you go to school,
like
we said, maybe your teacher's part of this group, and maybe you're the local doctor or the guy that owns the window and frame.
Probably all of the top members of that community had some part in this. If it's been going on that long, and if it's that pronounced, and people are just living with it as if nothing's there. it's probably
And
something
what better
underneath
place
the
to
surface of that.
do that than in a town with only 191 inhabitants?
Absolutely.
Because the bottom line is controlling the information. You
Yes.
know, controlling who knows, controlling what is happening, and making sure that everybody's on board. If you're not on board, then we'll make sure that
Then maybe you'll be the person that's moaning
Yeah.
in pain out in the woods.
yeah.
And
Jerry,
probably-
Right. Well,
so
and
now
then you
Jerry.
have the connection with somebody who has deep pockets, right?
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of that kind of together kind of makes for it. Yeah.
I mean, and I told you when we were talking to me, I said, "Has anybody written this script? Because we got to write the script." I mean, it almost writes itself as far as like what's.
Well, it begs to be written.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, the scariest part is that it is real people, and that the scary part is afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, afterwards going to the town and somebody drives by, or they driving by because they are seeing you out in the yard, making sure you are. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's.
All we,
Yeah.
need, all we need to do now is add Jerry to the story, and it'd be good.
Oh God! Well, then it just becomes
Jerry
then
the
it's just science
henchman.
fiction.
Send me out there. I will do recon on the place.
I hope so.
All right. You're doing
Well, okay, Sean. So do you feel safe taking Jerry out to this place?
Sure.
It's okay. It's okay. You can say no.
I'll take him to the gate. I'll
Take
him to the
it.
gate.
Take him
It's
to
on.
Take it to the game.
Jerry, it's on.
Can't wait.
Well,
You gotta go with me.
So
You
the
gotta
interesting thing
tell
is,
me
and this was a
everything.
nice segue into, then we kind of got off, was you talked about people, just about everybody you talk to, if they'll open up to you, has something that's happened to them unexplained. And that's the reason why we created this podcast. And we've said it multiple times. From the Shadows podcast was sort of the brainchild of Grover and I, from talking about, there's all kinds of people out there who have experienced things such as ourselves, but we're too embarrassed, too afraid to tell anybody about it for fear that you'd be ridiculed, called a liar, you're an idiot, you're making this up. And so people don't tell these stories. So we created this podcast as a form for people to reach out to us or to listen and to share their experiences, to know that they're not going to be judged criminally by me. Nor are you going to be judged in terms of what did you see, what did you hear, because obviously people have these experiences and they know what they've seen and they know what they've heard, and gives them a chance to tell other people and then compare notes. My story starts off when I was a teenager and being stalked basically and chased by a dog man, who I later found out was a dog man. Didn't know what it was when I was a kid. There was no frame of reference for me. Had this podcast existed or things like this when I was a kid, I could have found out more information. And it's taken however many years to be able to do that. So we encourage all of our listeners, or people out there, to reach out. You can reach us by email or Twitter or Facebook if you want to share us a story. And even if you don't want to come on, you just want somebody that's willing to listen.
I got to believe there's a lot of people with stories like Sean's.
Well, I believe so.
A lot of people.
Oh yeah, and I've heard them too.
And this is a platform where people can reach out and feel secure, and hopefully as this platform grows, we'll have different people that can help you to figure out what you've been dealing with or what you potentially may be involved in.
Now, Sean, there's an idea for a book, collecting the stories from the Satanic Panic of the early '90s, late '80s in Ohio.
You can go back as far as the mid '70s.
Oh
Yeah, but Sean,
yeah.
Sean wasn't even born then, so we don't want to.
It'd be interesting to get somebody who came forward who was participating in those rituals and has now said, "Hey, look, when I was a younger person, I got wrapped up in this occult stuff, and these are the things we were doing, and here's the rituals that we were doing."
Do you think you ever really get out of that, though?
I don't know that you ever do. It's like once you're in, you're in. How do you get out?
Ask Jerry.
That's John.
I was never into that crazy stuff.
Well, Sean, this was a great interview. It was awesome hearing your story. I'm hoping that the listeners out there, maybe it jogs memory, and they will jump on our Facebook page or After the Shadows forum page, and maybe share some of their stories, and we can maybe bring you back to maybe even moderate a Satanic Panic episode where we get some listener stories on here.
Hey, that'd be great. I really appreciate you all having me on today and talking about my book and my experience and all that. And I got to tell you, I've been going through the archive, man, and you guys doing a great job with this. So keep it up.
Oh, we
Appreciate
appreciate
that.
that.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you very
And
much.
for our
We
listeners
appreciate
out
it.
there, go to Amazon,
And
check
look-
out some of Sean's books. We listened to a sampling
Yeah.
of the audiobook. It was as if Christopher Walken was telling the story. one of my favorite,
So-
one of my favorite actors of all time, and so I'm definitely going to listen to the Pigman. So
Yeah, so
Thanks
if you can find the show Evil Encounters, episode 104, Touched by the Devil, go check that out. And then Sean's books are Autumn Dark and The Pigman, right? Those are the two that people can look up and find you on Amazon.
Yeah, and if short stories are your thing, I have a collection called A Looking In View.
Okay. Yeah, and I think when I looked it up on Amazon, that came up.
I'm looking
It did.
into.
I'm looking into.
Good.
Okay.
I love short
And-
stories. Stephen King's short stories are the best.
Yes.
Night
And
Shift
so-
was the first horror book that I read.
And now
yeah.
we'll have a link to Sean's Amazon page. But anybody that just wants to go Google him, his first name is Sean, Sean, and his last name is spelled Seebach, right?
Yep,
All right.
got
Wow.
it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Alicia. So there you go, everybody. Sean Seebach. Go check out his books and check out the episode of Evil Encounters. And
If you out there have heard a story similar to Sean's from when you were a kid, feel free to share it with us.
yep, we'd love to hear it. So
Thank you for coming on the podcast, Sean, and I look forward to having you back.
yep.
All right, that sounds like a great time. Thanks a lot, folks. I appreciate it. Take
Yep.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, a final word. Please visit us on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/From the Shadows Podcast, and on our Instagram page at instagram.com/From the Shadows Podcast. You can visit our webpage at From the Shadows Podcast .godaddysites.com, or contribute to our Facebook discussion page called After the Shadows, and tweet us on our Twitter feed at twitter.com/podcast_from. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you all. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.